Gerrie van Zyl is the founder and chairman and chief innovation officer for Healthbridge, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation because it's really something that I'm very, very passionate about. So welcome to you, Gerrie. You're joining us from Atlanta, right?
Yes, that's correct. Okay, I'm here on the corner in Tech Square in Atlanta, which is right in the heart of the Georgia Tech technology zone.
Ah, amazing. Now listen, I'm excited to talk to you today because this is a great story to tell. And you founded Healthbridge over 25 years ago. And as I mentioned, you're currently based in Atlanta. It's one of the most exciting AI cities in the world. There's a tremendous amount of innovation that's happening there. And you're running an innovation lab for a South African medical software company from there as your home base. Now, that in itself is absolutely fascinating and a great position to be in. Now, I know I've said quite a mouthful, but if you had to bump into me at a dinner in Atlanta, how would you put this all into perspective? Tell me the story from your eyes.
Yeah, well, 5 years ago, it was a very tough story to sell, but or tell. But now it's actually quite easy. I mean, first of all, after COVID, the world collapsed, right? The fact that we're doing this video conference is one thing, and particularly, and I'm going to use a metaphor for AI, but we've realized that the most important thing we can do as humans is make sure that we have the right context around us, because that, in the fact, will define us. So what I do now, what I tell people is very simple. I am really passionate about healthcare. I'm working. I have the ability to be in one of the hotbeds here, sucking up all the latest happenings, and I'm able to apply it in helping a country that I love dearly and in an industry that is absolutely crucially important. So I do spend a lot of time in South Africa. One needs to be close to clients. You need to be part of the organization that you are. So I'm back in South Africa about 6 times a year, usually for 2 to 3 weeks. But it works well for me because at the same time, I get it's a crazy place here. Literally on the block that I'm here, got one of the largest health insurers' IT departments behind us. Google and Microsoft and Apple are just down the road here. And probably the biggest collection of intellectual capital in the AI space on the Eastern Coast, other than MIT, is just on my left. So it's an incredibly vibrant place to be. And I use it to suck up the ideas and happenings here, and then, of course, apply it to our big challenges in South Africa.
Wow, that is like super exciting. I'm super excited just listening to you because I've been there before and I've been to MIT and I've been to Stanford as well. I mean, just great innovation hubs and amazing places. Just out of curiosity, when you come back to South Africa and you're South African, right? But
Yes.
when you come back and after you've been to Atlanta for a few months, how are we when it comes to the AI space and innovation? I know that we look at things from a different perspective on the continent, and there's exciting things happening on the innovation side. And AI, of course, is a leveler in many regards. Are we innovating, and is our creativity in this regard on the same level as what you're looking at where you are in Atlanta?
It's a great question, and it's not something that I've thought about exactly that way before. But I will say the following: that South Africa, maybe because our companies are smaller, maybe because we're quite entrepreneurial, we're it's very spotty, but South Africa is never far away from the forefront in the bright spots. I think, unfortunately, unfortunately for South Africa, it's the brights. There's a very big difference between the bright spots and the rest. So, from what I've heard of people like Discovery, what some of the banks are already starting to do in some of their areas in AI is really next level. And of course, I'm not even talking about the middle tier of the smaller innovative companies. There's some really good stuff happening in AI. So I don't think we're falling behind, but South Africans are very individualistic, and then trying to get everybody to move together is, of course, the more difficult thing. So similarly here in the US, I think To be honest, I think there's a lot of resistance to AI. So in SA, you see all the top stories of, what these people are doing on the West Coast and these people on the East Coast. But the average US has a lot of very big companies, and trying to get those big companies turning around using AI is a very, very big challenge sometimes. So we have an
Yeah,
advantage. You remember, probably even better than I do. Do you remember? I mean, South Africa and Africa really set the stage for what the mobile cellular platforms were with the prepaid idea.
absolutely. Yeah,
And these are the kinds
absolutely.
of examples where Africa actually leads, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
interesting.
and I think that there are some very creative stuff happening in South Africa, particularly in the use of AI, not necessarily building our own models. But I think very big opportunities. But I'd be hard pressed to say that I think that South Africa is behind or ahead. But we definitely have lots of bright spots. It's just we need to turn those bright spots into movements.
Okay. Now you're doing something very different because most innovation labs exist in startups. Healthbridge is doing something very, very different in this regard, innovating inside a mature healthcare platform, serving thousands of doctors and operating in a regulated environment. Now, that makes experimentation obviously a lot harder, but the impact far more immediate. So, what does an innovation lab look like inside an established 25-year-old business?
Yeah, great question. This is something we've been struggling with for probably about 20 of those 25 years. And, we realized that all of our biggest successes in innovation actually came when we put teams slightly aside from the rest of the business and gave them a lot of leeway and freedom. And when we realized about 5 years ago that the world was about to enter, there was going to be a transformative change. I pitched to the board that we needed to think about splitting, have the innovation lab completely separate from Healthbridge, and they bought it. So what we're doing isn't all that unique. It's a recipe that's publicized by some very famous consultants called the Invincible Company Framework, and the idea is that you have to create a space where people can take risk. And the primary goal of that organization is to learn. It's not to be safe. It's not to comply. It's not to provide a reliable service. Its primary focus is just to experiment and to learn. And that's what we've created. I mean, in our case, it's been wildly successful. We've been going at it for a little bit more than 2 years now. And we've had a very long string of very successful innovations. Actually, like four very meaningful innovations that are moving the needle for us. So the model is proving itself. It's not without its challenges, though. Always trying to mitigate between the behemoth, which is the existing business, and that's where the political power rests. Very, very tough challenges to solve. But I think in our case, I'm the founder and executive chairman, so the innovation lab, it's we kind of neutralize some of those political difficulties that other companies may face. But it's been a wild ride and so far very successful.
Well, listen, I can feel your passion that you have for what you're doing there. And let's be honest, South Africa is a unique challenge. The burden of diseases is pretty high. The doctor to patient ratio is quite stressed. There's also a massive private-public divide. It's no secret the battle that's going on there, and I think we are making good progress in this regard. But can AI actually help close that gap, or is it largely aimed at the private sector?
No, absolutely. And I think where our passion comes from and the passion of Healthbridge is that we see AI is actually formative, in closing that gap. And if you just look at the NHI debate and now the recent NHI sort of not backtracking but delaying NHI, I think we have to recognize that healthcare is a massive political imperative, and the reason it is because that's what in a democracy that is what the people need, and by not satisfying it is we are doing something very dangerous. So I believe that in fact I'm very happy about the government backtracking of NHI. We would have been bundling into a model that was designed for yesterday, not for the future. And we know how difficult it is to kind of unwind something once it's been implemented. I think with what's happened now, the private sector and the public sector have an opportunity to rethink about what NHI looks like in the future. And this is a very exciting space. So to answer your question, there's evidence that one can offer 80% of what current primary care offers for about, I'm going to say $2, but it's a 35 Rand per person per month, which is amazing. Yeah, at those kinds of prices, you could have absolutely incredible service to large parts of the population for a pittance compared to what people were talking about for NHI before. These are the kind of models that we can look at in the future. And I think this is where it's an incredibly exciting. I think AI may save us in this regard, and I don't think I'm being melodramatic when I say it that way.
No, you absolutely aren't, and you're 100% right. And I think that technology and where technology has evolved to and where we are now with AI and the exponential growth of AI, right, is really going to make all of that difference. And your research at Healthbridge, the data shows that AI solutions could save a doctor 45 minutes of admin per day. Now, when you start adding all of that up, it adds up to large amounts of hours. Now, what does that actually mean for patient care? Now, is that time going back to patients, or is it going to the bottom line? Where does that time go to?
Great question. I mean, first of all, I think the 45 minutes is probably very conservative, but our AI up to now has been focused on reducing the administrative burden of the doctor. So the first of all, let me say we haven't seen any doctors spend less time seeing patients since we've brought those savings to them. So it is going back to probably seeing more patients, less wait times in order to see your doctor. And interestingly, and this is very important, we're starting to see doctors spend time differently. We've had a very reactive system in the past. The system's been designed that way, where whether you are diabetic, hypertensive, with one or two additional chronic conditions, or whether you are a sniffly person with a earache, you would get the same 20-minute slot. Right. That is not a good use of a doctor's time. You really would like the doctor to spend much more time with a person with multiple chronic diseases, because that's where the leverage in both health outcomes and savings lie. And what we are starting to see is that doctors are able, because AI is allowing doctors to be proactive in what they do, starting to spend different amounts of time with the different categories of issues that they're dealing with. This is a very good thing. It can dramatically expand the effective capacity of the current fixed base of doctors and nurses that we have in the country. So we are seeing those kinds of savings go right back into care for the patients. We doctors use calendar systems on Healthbridge. We can track, and we do track how much time doctors are spending in consultations, and that hasn't reduced one little bit. In fact, increased.
Yeah.
So it's a very happy story.
Yeah.
It shows that AI is actually creating capacity already, and we're only at the very beginning of that trend.
No, you're 100% right, and it empowers doctors, and I think that it gives you the ability to focus on what's important, and as you say, manage your time properly. But I was looking on your website, Gerrie, and correct me if I'm wrong, Healthbridge is currently serving over 7,000 medical professionals. Is that the right number?
No, that's correct. That is correct.
Okay, so now I'm starting to do some numbers in my small brain, and I'm looking at that data set, and that's pretty enormous, because if you look at the patients that those healthcare professionals are seeing, you are probably sitting on one of the richest data sets in South African healthcare. And we know how valuable that data is, both for research and understanding diseases, et cetera. And that's, I mean, you're sitting on gold, but at the same time, there's a massive responsibility on that data because it's so sensitive and because how seriously we all take our privacy when it comes to medical data. So what's the responsible way to unlock that data that you're sitting on?
Okay, great question, and I wish I had a slick and a quick answer to that, but you're exactly right in outlining what a difficult situation it is, and for this reason, we've actually taken the whole process we're taking it very slowly. We have been already approached by some significant companies, wanting to joint venture and just take and be able to look at all of our data. And we've been very firm about one thing here. For us, it actually comes down to the patient. So at the moment, if there isn't a benefit to our direct benefit to our patients, there's no reason why we would consider sharing the data. We do realize, and I must say, I wish it weren't so, but we've realized that we are completely under leveraging the data that we have, even for ourselves and our doctors. So in the next month, we're about to launch out of the innovation lab an incredible product that lets a doctor look at all of their patient data as a whole and start just using AI, classifying and categorizing patients who are on similar circumstances and similar conditions for which the doctor or the practice can run special programs. This is a kind of a game changer, and this is using data that's already in systems, already the doctors have access to because it's their data, but using it in a way to make care proactive rather than the traditional, well, let's see if my calendar fills up and, it's like a lucky packet. Who's coming into my room, in the next visit? So, this is probably, in my mind, this is the most exciting product since real-time claims, since we launched real-time claims back in 2002. And so to kind of fully answer your question, we're taking this very, very slowly, being very, very careful. Are we leaving opportunity on the table? Yeah, probably, but right now we'd much prefer to take a trusted approach as a responsible custodian of that information, and act a little bit more slowly and premeditatively than I would say be in any situation that undermines the trust that doctors and patients have in our system.
Now, you have very strong views on healthcare as one of the biggest levers for South Africa's development. Because we get healthcare right, you've got a healthier country,
Yeah.
people live longer, all of that kind of stuff just adds exponential percentages to
Yeah.
economic development. Can you share some of your views and how this impacts how you view the role of Healthbridge in a larger ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this is almost I feel like an energizer bunny. You wind me up and you pointed me a direction. This may be a 2-hour-long podcast, but here is the very short version.
Take as
Um,
long as you like to answer this.
Okay, here's even the short version. So I was one of the most formative moments of my life was at a presentation in Johannesburg in 2000, and the speaker was Professor Jeffrey Sachs. At that stage, he was the lead developmental economist at the Harvard at Harvard and Kennedy School of Government, I believe. And he made this proposition, and he's done a lot of work and research in particularly developing countries about how to get them to develop countries. And he made this proposition that initially, my very capitalist, free market orientated, brain glitched on. But when I researched it, he was exactly right. And what he said is that healthcare is the most important lever for a country as it tries to navigate being from a developing country into a developed country, and for very specific reasons. And there were two particular. First of all, the immigration from a developing country is of the top skills, the what he called the information workers at the top of a democratic pyramid, is one of the most punishing things for a country. And one of the big differentiators between developed countries that have very deep IP, very deep skills, at the top level. So first of all, his point was that a developing country needs to have a world-class private healthcare system that people with money can pay for in order to make sure that the pressure to leave due to healthcare is limited. And he did some research, and I forget whether it was Ghanaian or Nigerian taxi drivers in New York. You've probably heard the stories. You come into taxi drivers from Nigeria working in New York that actually have degrees in science or in BComs. And then why are you working as a taxi driver? Well, the research there showed one of the biggest reasons, particularly for young couples, that they immigrate is even in the developed world, people are not prepared to play the Russian roulette of let's have 6 kids so 2 kids survive. And particularly from the women, the big pressure is to immigrate to countries where they can have access to first world healthcare. So that was for the top of the pyramid. But the more inspiring story was actually for the middle part of the pyramid, what he called skilled workers. And this is where he had a very interesting way to look at economy. It really goes as follows: that for an economy to really thrive, the investment that you put into people, the people must produce much more surplus value to the country than the investment you put into them. Right? That makes obvious sense, right? In aggregate, if you sum up there. So what is the investment? For the first 18 years of anybody's life, society is investing in you. You are returning nothing. Your parents are feeding you, they're investing into you, but we can think about a society. And then for the rest of the year, you have of your life, you have the opportunity to create a return to society on that investment. If your life expectancy for skilled workers, and skilled workers are bricklayers or traffic cops or factory workers, if your life expectancy for skilled workers comes down, not only are you denying society a big opportunity to get a return on all the investment you made into that person's life and training, but you also do something very dangerous. It's the last 5 to 10 years of a skilled worker's life that they become the coach and the teacher of new people coming into the industry. Brickworking, you don't have the strength to lay the bricks at the same speed. So on the work site, if you look at work sites, you'll see the 50, 60-year-old master bricklayers coaching the younger guys. So in the developing countries, when life expectancy is only 58 years old, as I believe it currently is South Africa. It used to be 38 in times of AIDS. For life expectancy for skilled workers used to be 38. You're not only reducing the productive and the time that people add value to a country, which gets it to grow, which creates the positive economic flywheels, but you are cutting off those people that are so crucial at training the next level of skilled workers. Yeah, I listened to that, Aki. I was intrigued. I did research on it, and it is absolutely real. And for some very Spartan, hard reasons, getting our healthcare industry, creating a private healthcare industry that resists and gives people one less reason to wanting to immigrate, skilled workers, people with knowledge level skills, and then, even more importantly, ensuring that you can get the societal return on the investment you make in your citizens by extending life expectancy and particularly keeping people in productive careers and jobs for as long as possible. So when I heard that, I was actually, when I researched that and became convinced, I actually said, this is the industry that I want to work in. This is you remember 1998 to 2000. It was a very exciting time, and I, made the choice that if I'm going to be in South Africa involved there, I want to be involved in something that's really meaningful, that makes a difference, and that is how I landed in healthcare. Many people have said to me, it's a tough industry, it's a very unforgiving industry, but I've loved it, and I have no problems getting out of bed every day. feeling that we are doing something that is really, really important.
Well, I mean, it's incredibly rewarding, as you say, and you're making a difference to people's lives and economies, etc. Now, there are lots of young South African developers that are watching this, tech entrepreneurs, techpreneurs, we call them. They're watching this right now. Would you say healthcare is a space worth building in? Is it something that you encourage people to say, get into that space?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely I think so. Um, and the reason is twofold. So first of all, I'm going to expand that beyond just developers, and this is something I can talk to you about as well. In the innovation lab, we have actually gone away from titles of software engineers or developers. What we are actually looking for are people who can, we call them product engineers now, but understand product and understand enough about software engineering that they can direct agents to do the coding. Now, this really opens up the amount, the group of people that I believe can be very useful entrepreneurs in healthcare. So it's not, you don't have to be a coder. What you need to be able to do is to be able to understand where there are problems and opportunities in a particular market, where you're able to be creative to try and join the dots together to think about how to solve these problems or capitalize on opportunities. And then you need to know just enough about technology and IT to guide and to launch off agents to build what you need to do. So first of all, I want to open that scope. I hope other people in like product managers, business analysts, these people are listening to this because everybody can now be a entrepreneur in this space. And I think it's a very rich space. As much as we think that we're smart in the innovation lab and see a picture, I've got no doubts that we are probably seeing 10% of the picture. And if we were to fast forward and have this discussion in 5 years' time, Aki, you'd say to me, Gerrie, so if you thought about what you knew then, how much of that is realized? And I would probably say I was probably only 10% right. The reason being is, as humans, we have our own mental models and we somewhat locked into them. We need a rush of young creative people looking at the problems in healthcare and coming up with blank slates and saying, this is not the way that it should be happening. So I think it's a very exciting place. Healthcare, the one thing I'll caution, healthcare is tough. Doctors are very, very tough when it comes to, wanting value, and patients are very conservative on jumping onto anything regards their healthcare. So the barrier to entry just because of those are quite high. But I think that AI is going to enable some of the most incredible value-adding opportunities that people who can think laterally, who have empathy for clients, are going to have a field day over the next 5 to 10 years.
Gerrie, if you could automate one thing in the South African healthcare system tomorrow, what would it be and why would you do that? One thing, if you could change one thing in our healthcare system, what would it be?
Okay, it's going to sound, I think, yeah, it's going to sound weird, but I would want to automate the pre-consultation process. Before you see the doctor, the half an hour or 10 minutes that you can spend on your mobile phone or on your computer to prepare you for that visit and prepare the doctor for the visit. The reason being is digitizing that part of the process. First of all, saves so much time for a doctor, and then we have the ability to create a data set that empowers the doctor to be in a position to really use their judgment to come up with the right answer. So I guess it sounds trivial, but the biggest problem at the moment is digitizing. The more we can digitize, the more we can use AI to help doctors, to assist them, to give them co-pilots to work. The problem is the digitization at the moment starts the moment that you come into the doctor's office, and that is too late. You want the digitization. You want to have a 5-minute discussion with your phone about why you're seeing the doctor, what the symptoms are, so that the AI can begin to cross-reference And by the time you walk into the doctor's practice, the doctor's presented with a much fuller picture of you, right?
Gee,
So, so
that
that
actually
that
makes
is,
so much sense.
yeah, that I think is, get earlier, start the digitization earlier, and then all the power and all the wonderful potential benefits of AI will flow after that.
So in other words, you would put in, obviously your age is a big reference point. What sex you are is a reference point. Family history of diseases, for example. But then as soon as you start saying, you know what, I suffer from high blood pressure, or I've got problems with sugar, this is the medication I'm currently taking. The last time I had an operation was whenever. Then the AI starts crunching all of that. And obviously, the more information you input, the better the outcomes are going to be. So the doctor then gets presented with a fantastic summary of the patient. I mean, that's
Exactly,
absolutely
exactly.
makes a lot
And
of
you know what?
sense.
It's not just that the patient would say that stuff, but you may start with something like, I'm suddenly feeling kind of a lightness or a jitteriness in my chest, and then the AI would be able to have the smart next question, right? Have you had any change in medication lately? How many coffees are you drinking a day? Are there any other specific questions? Have you changed your exercise regime significantly? So it's not even the generic stuff like family history. At least in our system, we have that on the system already. By the time you join the doctor's practice, the family history is in there. But it's for given what's happened now and given your blood test last month. Let me ask some very specific questions for you. And now imagine, how often have you been at the point where you go to a doctor or a family member goes to a doctor and the doctor listens and listens and then puts their hands on you and then says, you know what, I need to send you out for a blood test. Right. Then you go to the pathology lab, you have a blood test, and 3 days later, the doctor's either going to call you back or send you a WhatsApp to say what happened. How powerful would it be if it's like, Aki, I think, let me just check with the doctor. The doctor's always in control here. The doctor says, you know what, actually, it really doesn't make sense for you to see me until we've had this blood test. So before you even see me tomorrow, please go to a lab depot today. Let's do the blood so that when I see you, I've got all the results and I can give you the answer right then and there.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Harry, is that, this data is so important and you're opening up a lot of things in my mind. But today we're wearing very sophisticated watches that are reading our heart rates all the time. Most of us, well, not most of us, but I'm saying many people have got things like blood pressure monitors at home. They're
Yeah.
monitoring sugar. There's a scale in the home that is connected to the internet. All of these connected devices. Why do doctors never ask? And I guess it's a privacy issue as well. But imagine if you could go to the doctor and share all the data that you have on yourself that's coming from your watch, your scale at home, your blood pressure monitor, etc., to make the picture even clearer. Is that something that is on
Yes,
the horizon that you could possibly do?
it is.
Is that
It is
data
actually,
valuable or accurate?
yes. So some of our doctors are putting a lot of pressure on us to actually bring this information on platform, right? And clearly, it would always be the patient electing to share this with their doctor. But interestingly, there is some very powerful research coming out that the Aura rings, the Garmins, the Whoops, as I have, that HRV measurement, that heart rate variability measurement, um, can indicate a lot of things, give an indication of medicine interactions and other things happening in a patient's body. So as a sleep monitor, yep, it's valuable. But by the time you can add some of those metrics with knowledge of what happened to the patient over the last 3 months, it becomes very valuable. So yes, right now it is a bit of the complexity is a little bit that there are so many different devices, and every company has their own API, and every company wants to try and keep the data on their platform. So, Garmin, for instance, is not integrated into the Apple Health app or the Google Health app. A lot of the other metrics providers are. So you're into this bit of a Tower of Babel problem right now, where in order to have adequate coverage of the market, you need to be supporting 5, 10, 20 different integrations with different providers. But I think that there's some good news on this. There are people that are starting to aggregate this information, and we are looking at when, not if, when we'll be bringing that kind of information onto platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine that in the same way that you're sharing the data from your watch, if doctors could cross-share information on a network and blood tests and all that sort of thing, you even get a better picture of a patient's health. Kenny,
100%. This
yeah,
is one of our
yeah,
most loved features. It's really at the moment. This is what we have. Is we have an AI co-pilot that says, okay, okay, I'm going to use you. Sorry, as you're going to be the guinea pig. I want to send Aki through to make a cardiologist, because my concern is X, Y, Z. The doctor will just say that, and the AI will look through your entire record, all of your pathology results, all of history, and then come up with a succinct view. The specialist doesn't want a pile of papers this thick. It doesn't help them, right? No,
yeah,
not with
exactly.
the amount. Comes with a succinct, like, I'm sending Aki to you for this reason, and here is all the information I have in my record that I believe may be relevant for you, and well summarized, well structured. It's one of our most loved features at the moment, automated referral letter creation for doctors. And the second thing is it saves a lot of money, because usually you arrive at the specialist, the doctor does these panels of tests, maybe 20 blood tests and a few other things and an ECG. He sends you to the cardiologist. What does the cardiologist do? He puts you through ECG and he does all the same
Does the
20
same
blood tests.
thing.
You want
Exactly,
to see those
exactly.
results. Now, in this case, you literally get, here they are. If you want to click on the link, you can get last week's Lancet pathology report with a result by just clicking on this link. Go have a look at it. Very powerful, and yeah, a big reason that specialists are really appreciating the referral letters they get from doctors with this functionality, because it just compresses the time and allows them to focus on the key issues much faster.
Fascinating. Eddie, listen, I can talk to you all day, and I think that you and I need to have a catch-up every 6 months or a year, the very least, to find out what these innovations, because let's be honest, this healthcare space is moving at an exponential rate, and it's unlocking tremendous value in society. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Gerrie van Zyl, who's the founder, he's the chairman and chief innovation officer of Healthbridge. Gerrie, absolute pleasure chatting again. I look forward to catching up very soon.
Thanks, Aki. Would love to. This has been really wonderful.